It Ends With Us author Colleen Hoover is finally breaking her silence on the It Ends With Us drama between Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively. And her comments are likely to surprise you. Welcome to Popcorn Planet. I am Andy Signore. If you've been following this case as closely as we have, you've noticed Colleen Hoover has kind of played both sides and not really said anything. Well, now she's in a big piece in Elle magazine talking about how she's taking over Hollywood. And it's an interesting read because honestly, I did not know a lot about her and I learned some stuff about her. And I'm also just frustrated with her because I don't feel like she's being genuine. I do feel like she's trying to play both sides, which I can understand to a point, but I do believe she also has thrown Justin under the bus. And that I'm based on her own text messages, which have come out through Justin and the experience. Now, I can understand a little bit of what she's trying to get at and through her text and her frustration, but let's go through sort of what was said in this piece before we do sort of the wraparound. So she wants her own production company now, an opportunity to tell the stories you want to tell and have a bit of agency, she says, over nachos and strawberry margaritas. She was barely involved with the first film adaptation of one of her books, It Ends With Us, starring Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, which blew up fantastically in a tit-for-tat legal drama. Suffice to say, she thought maybe she'd like to have a bit more control in the future. Now, that's not anything she said. I can understand this 100%. I've said this all along. This legal drama has absolutely ruined the movie and the book. And it's a shame because I do think it was a good movie and I do think it was an important book. So I can understand Colleen's frustration there, but I'm mad she's not just yelling at least both of them, if not one specifically. She says she now has created her own Heartbones Entertainment, which now she's working on to keep, her future books more control. Now, she once runs out of superlatives when attempting to sum up her success. She has sold more books than God, literally. Her titles outsold the Bible in 2022 by at least 3 million copies. Talk about a stretch. How about all time? Let's talk about all time. 1 year, she outsold the Bible. Okay. She sold more than Dr. Seuss, Stephen King, John Grisham, and James Patterson, too. At one point that year, she held 6 of the top 10 spots. And good for you, but it's just weird the way they're sort of even attempting to put this up there. The last novel she released, It Starts With Us, had more pre-orders than any other novel in Simon & Schuster's 100-year history. It set a record for selling more than 800,000 copies on the day of release. Look, all respect to Colleen Hoover's success because she deserves it. I mean, this is hard to do in today's day and age to have these, books do popular. Most people aren't reading as much. So I can't deny that part of it. Okay. Colleen, to be fair, with respect, good job. Height of Hoover's, the heights Hoover reached would be vertigo-inducing for anyone, but especially for an author who famously started out self-publishing her novels by uploading to Amazon from her single-wide trailer in a small town of Texas. She really did come from nowhere. She grew up in a tiny speck 90 minutes east of Dallas with 300 residents. Her parents divorced when she was 3. That formed her earliest memories. Watching her dad throw a television at her mom inspired her TikTok viral novel, It Ends With Us, about a woman who ends the cycle of abuse. I'm so grateful for her being able to make that decision to leave him at a time when it was so hard and she was so broke and had nowhere to go. Hey, look, be mad at her all you want. She's proving, she's done some impressive stuff here. Because It Ends With Us was rooted in her own experience, she found it easy to stood by people who criticized it for having an oversimplified portrayal of DV. I respect people who have passionate opinions about it, but I would not change a thing because it was my mother's experience. I learned a lot from the criticism, but it doesn't change the fact that this was one woman's story. I'm not trying to say all abusers are this way or all victims are this way. I think that I made that clear in my author's note, that I was simply just putting myself in my mother's shoes and wanted to understand her more. And when she read it, God, it was just such a healing moment for us, but she wouldn't write the book today. I would just be worried about the scrutiny. Plus all the controversy she's going to get to in a second. Now, what's interesting is she wrote her first book in Slammed, and in January she uploaded to Amazon. She started actually selling some books. She then did another book and some other books. And then, she even admitted in the early days that she was like wanting to work with other publishers. She's like, why don't we get the chance to do that? If you want to contract with me, I might also publish somewhere else. I point that out because she's about to say how ignorant she was to some of her contracts and stuff. But she knew better enough to hey, I'm not agreeing to one person. There was a moment before she took off during Book Talk in 2020 when Hoover chatted daily with readers in her group called Cohorts, where she would drop into book clubs and relish every opportunity to connect with the readers face to face, where her husband was cranking out merch and a self-printer at home. If she could have stopped time, she would have. That's clearly her favorite part of all this. But then in the pandemic, she actually decided to release her books free online for people to entertain who were bored at home. And it blew up. Hundreds of thousands of downloads. They started raving about it on TikTok, and that's ultimately where the success really exploded. Essentially overnight, she became more popular than she could have ever anticipated. Now, they talk about how self-depreciating she is. When they say someone says she's overrated, she instantly goes, I agree. I absolutely agree. I feel like I've gotten to this career so accidentally, and as big as it's gotten, I've never made an effort to get here because I'm just very much confused by it. I don't get it because I've read my books. I'm not some highbrow literary writer. I just write fun books that are easy reads. And so sometimes I'm like, what is happening? I gotta say, I know a lot of people are gonna be mad, but it's like, I like sort of the approach that she's putting there. Now, getting into the It Ends With Us stuff, getting into that part. This is where it finally comes into. That's enough backstory. Let's get into it. She did this deal with a writer to do it for Verizon, a short-lived streaming service that didn't last, but the writer did, and that's when they began writing a script for It Ends With Us. It was my most popular book, but it was also the story that meant the most to me. I knew it meant the most to the readers, so that's naturally one I wanted to hopefully give them on screen. We can only wonder what they would have done, though, because that same year, Justin's production company, Wayfair, reached out to buy the rights to the book, and the pair scrapped their version and signed up with Wayfair. And you got to remember, we saw those documents. She signed up with Wayfair because she loved his take. She loved his passion. She loved that he was going to make it all about the experience and, help charities, etc. She was all in it, and she was popular at this point. Not as popular as she was in 2020, but still making deals. And then at the same time, she also sold rights to Regretting You to someone at Amazon, this was to another company, which then later came out. And then as well as Verarity to MGM Amazon, which is coming out next. When she sold the rights to those 3 books, she didn't understand her contract or that she'd never get them back. That's 100% completely my fault. But after that, I decided not to sell anymore. Now, again, I blame the author more than this because she didn't lose her rights to the book. She can still release the book in many other ways, a Broadway show, a concert experience where she reads it out loud, et cetera, et cetera. She sold the film rights to these studios. And yeah, when one's successful, typically that goes longer. And it wasn't just Justin's deal, it was all the deals. That's a typical deal when you're just starting up and you're not a massively famous author. And typically when you're starting out and you're not a massively famous author, you don't get that full control that she would get now. And so that's important to set up as we now get into these points. So Hoover was an executive producer in It Ends With Us, and it was on set for a few days. She even has a brief cameo, but otherwise she says she was completely unaware that anything was happening. Now this is interesting. She's basically not defending Blake. She's like, I don't know. I was unaware anything was happening. Despite mixed reviews, the movie was a smash, but soon Lively and Baldoni's relationship blew up into lawsuits and countersuits and Blake's. A trial for Lively's suit against Baldoni is scheduled to begin in March. We all know this, yada, yada, yada. The author says she finds the whole mess unfortunate and disappointing. It feels like a circus. Whose fault is that? Who started this lawsuit? Who couldn't move on? Was it really Justin? Come on, Colleen. Come on. Who, when we spoke, was preparing to give a deposition in a few weeks. When there are real people involved with real feelings and emotions, this actually truly has impacted some of the actors' careers in huge ways. Some of the actors? What about Justin? What about Justin? You really think all this was worth it to taint Justin forever? I'm kind of shocked by this, Colleen. And if he did, why aren't you speaking out against him? My God, pick a side. Quit playing in the middle. This is an important case. I just find it all around sad, she says. She's leery of breathing more life into the controversy. Well, you just did. That's why we're spotting this. And chooses her words carefully. I'm just trying to stay removed from the negativity. I have my own story I could tell, but I don't want to bring attention to it. And I don't want to have to put someone else down to lift myself up. So I'd rather just ignore it and let people think and say what they're going to say. I feel like it's so big at this point that there's nothing anyone can say to change whatever opinion people have on it, even though no one has the actual truth. Not even me. Are you paying attention to the lawsuit? Are you following all the evidence? Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you want to be more invested in this thing that's overtaken your movie? Who's in the right? Who's in the wrong? And if they're both wrong and you got something on Justin, then say that. Just say something. You are a key part in this. You are, whether you like it or not. That's what's happened. And it's just incredibly frustrating to see this. Now, look, she says she feels bad for her mom. The book was inspired by her story, and now it gives us PTSD to think about it. I'm going to give her that. I'm really bummed by that. I'm so sad any of this drama happened. But my problem is I don't see Justin causing any of this drama. The lawsuit did. And was this lawsuit really worth it? That's ultimately where I'm stuck and why I don't see why Colleen's not equally frustrated that this whole thing is happening in the first place. I feel awful because I almost feel like she's gone through more with the aftermath of this film, more pain than she went through with my dad, just seeing the ugliness of it. It's tainted how Hoover feels about the most personal novel. I can't recommend it anymore. I feel like the lawsuit has overshadowed it, as in the book. She doesn't recommend the book. She sort of disavowed the book. I'm almost embarrassed to say I wrote it. When people ask me what I do, I'm just like, I'm a writer. Please don't ask me what I wrote. Colleen, that's Blake's fault. It's Justin's fault because he called her sexy and it has his own feelings on what that meant. I'm so confused here. She hopes one day after the trial concludes, she might feel differently. The more time that passes, the easier everything gets for all of us. But it is sad because I'm very proud of that book and I'm still proud of it, but less publicly so. Maybe I need therapy. I don't know. Honestly, maybe you do. And maybe you need to do a little bit more homework. And maybe you should have called Justin and tried to hear him out. They go on a little bit more, blah, blah, blah. Writing books pays the bills, but more pressure's on you. Anyway, that was it. So the more pressure there is on me, the more likely I will get them done. So print that S. She's talking about finishing her books. Look, the reality though, and what frustrates me is we are getting an insight into what she wrote Justin, why they stopped talking. Her issue was that she wasn't involved in the film. She's saying it even in this print thing. She was barely there. You were more involved than most were. Justin didn't have to have you involved at all. But he did. You got to give notes. And if you really wanted more control, then why didn't you say that? All these text messages, I don't see anything where you're like, Justin, I'd really like to be a little bit more involved. Hey, I know, can I do this? Da, da, da. You're kind of just like, well, I'm not allowed to be, so I'm not going to say anything. But when I do, I do. But he's asking you. And he seemed like a good enough guy that I bet you he could have gotten you more involved. It's just frustrating me the way she's sort of rewriting her own messages, which we can read in these filings and stuff that really do paint a picture that I'm confused, Colleen. Because he didn't let you have more control, even though you signed it off. And then he did let you have a lot of notes and parts of the process. It's odd. Now, I could argue Justin should have involved her more. You could make that argument, sure, just to be safe, get the author so involved. But I suspect he thinks he did. And that's what's frustrating with a lot of this case. I feel like a lot of this case is just a lot of people miscommunicating and assuming they know what the other one's feeling. And as someone who's looking at this as objectively as possible, that's what this whole thing seems to me. And I do think Blake is being way more manipulative and harsher than Colleen wants to admit because she's stuck in it and she doesn't want to feel the wrath of Ryan Reynolds and Blake, stomping down on her. But as someone who's facing subpoenas from them, who has nothing to do with this case, who has not been Mr. Negative against Blake, I'm calling it out like it is. I find her lack of being more specific and helping kind of frustrating. And I got to say, I don't dislike her as a person involved in what she said. She loves Nathan Fielder and Nathan For You. I love that show. That shows she's smart. It's a great show. Colleen, come on. God, I would give anything to have an off-the-record conversation with you. Please. I'm literally fighting a subpoena to not give up my sources. Colleen, let's talk. I want to hear it out. I get why you're frustrated. We all are. There's got to be a way to really bring people together again and make the focus be back on the book. I wish we could talk about that. Tell Colleen in the comments you wanted her to call anonymously. Have her speak to me off the record. I swear I would keep it off the record. Smash that like, leave a comment down below. Hopefully we will at some point get more insight from her, or at least she'll finally address it more specifically. Until then, stay tuned here for more details.